Ron, you brought up something a while ago. You started talking about politics, and I think that's a conversation that I'm setting up for. How does politics play into this from your perspective?
I'm not going to debate from what is right. I'm going to debate from what I see, and I'm certainly open. I'm a big boy. I'm open to that being challenged, because I've like I said, I've tried to be a part of the solution for a bigger part of my life. So now I'm just understanding that what we have done has not worked. We're getting a reaction right now, but reaction is different from response. I am hopeful because the reaction is coming from people who do not normally react. We are getting a reaction from white pastors, maybe not all of them, but much more than normal. We're getting a reaction from white people. We're even getting a reaction from police force. And I'm going to tell you, blue blood runs thick.
Yes.
But there are people now calling other people out and saying there's no part of our training that ever would require anything like that. So that right there, I see a crack in the dam, so to speak. But if we're talking about systemic, if we're talking about systematic, if we're talking about infrastructure, then we cannot remove the fact that there's got to be policy, which we cannot remove the fact there's going to be politics. And Bishop, I submit this somewhat as a request, your thoughts on it. When I went on the All African American Call-In show yesterday, the first question I got was, did I vote for Trump? That was the first question I got. Second question was I a Republican? And so it went down that line, and I sat there for about an hour, and I said, well, you know what? Let's just go here. I said, let's just quit dodging it. Let's just go here. And I talked about my history and where I was politically all the way up to that point. I would consider myself a conservative in my beliefs, but a conservative who has tried to inundate himself in the needs of underprivileged communities. So a conservative with social awareness. I'm afraid that is okay. We're in wartime. You can't hardly fix something in wartime. You got to fix it in peacetime. And in peacetime, we don't talk about it. And like I said, I was raised white, Southeastern, Bible Belt, evangelical. Huge voting block. So you have a Democratic base that is very socially aware. You have a Republican base that has been very successful in the business world, but probably has never driven to the other side of town in their entire life. And so I'm sitting here saying, okay, I know where I come from, and I have ministered to the Black community now 29 years, and I'm trying to see the bridge. And I just wonder anybody else's sentiments and your response to that.
What we want, what I want, let me speak for myself because the Black community is not monolithic, is a country that allows us to have disagreements about certain things, but protects all of us.
Yeah.
I do not live up under the notion that we're going to get 360 million people to agree on all of these issues. And that's not what I want my government in the business of doing, is telling me what to think.
Yes, sir.
I want them protecting my right to disagree with you and my right to have my own opinion. I would much rather them put in some roads and some infrastructure before we're drinking water like Flint. I would rather them take care of some clean air. I would rather them provide medical care irrespective to what I believe. I would rather them stay up in there than to get down into the weeds of these issues, which
right.
Incidentally, you've had a series of Republican conservative presidents, and you still haven't done anything with Roe versus Wade. And I can't understand how you can still raise this flag and fly it as the most important thing, because I hate to say this, but if we don't clean up the air and if we don't fix our infrastructure and we start drinking enough rust, it ain't gonna matter who you slept with.
Exactly.
I think we're all being manipulated.
Woo.
I think we're all being manipulated. Let's hit the spot that makes the blacks come out and vote. Let's hit the spot that makes the white evangelicals come out and vote. We're all being manipulated, and we're not seeing the bigger picture of the fact that democracy doesn't mean that you get to control what I think. That a republic such as the United States was not designed so that you could enforce and infuse your values on me. They came to escape that kind of thing.
Right.
And yet we are hell-bent on recreating this sort of thing, that we have a theocracy rather than a democracy or a republic. Once I know what you care about, I know how to control you.
Right. And I do agree. I do agree. Both sides push the buttons and engage the war.
Right.
I know what gets this side riled up. I know what gets this side riled up. Let's hit the buttons, and nothing else ever gets talked about.
Right.
Like you just gave a whole litany of items that I don't care who's been in charge. They haven't been touched for decades.
No.
They haven't been touched because we touched the buttons and let everybody fight.
Yes. And we're so busy fighting about these issues, and they're serious issues, and they're important issues. A woman's right to choose, or whether you're pro-life, I get all of that, how you define marriage and all of that. There's serious issues. I don't really know whether there are issues that are my country's business. I don't know about that, but those are serious issues nonetheless to have discussions about. I would rather have a country who focused on that when I poured water out of my faucet, that there wasn't something in it that was killing me, that brought down the price of prescriptions, where they weren't getting 200% markups on prescriptions, where it cost me not to die to the point that as I get older, I couldn't afford to live. Right. I would rather have a country that protected how much you would charge me to die, so that I don't have to be a rich person to have a funeral. I would rather have a person that had a system of health care that created the quality of life. I would rather have a country that didn't have the biggest prison business in the world operating right now. All of those babies lost is a horrible thing. All of their daddies locked up is a horrible thing.
Yes, yes.
And I think until we talk about that, we can talk about focus on the family and what the family ought to be like. But if you got the daddy in jail and the mama's working at Wendy's, and they got 3 or 4 kids and they're living in the hood, then you can take that on up out of here, because your community and my community are way too far apart. That's what I think about it. What do you all think about it?
We're responsible for this, because the rhetoric right now, I would definitely get in trouble, but I'm going to blame it on Bishop Jakes. He asked me. I think we have made it anti-Christian to have different political thoughts. Mm-hmm. And you hit it on the head. People don't want to hear about, you actually changed my life a couple of years ago. You don't know this. I was hearing you preach, and I would consider myself a conservative Republican for a long time, just because that's what you do.
It's what you did.
And, abortion is the premier issue in life.
Yes.
Down one time, and you said, of course this matters. I mean, I'm pro-life, but we believe absolutely in the sanctity of life. But you said, if you don't want to care for the girl you forced to keep the baby, and you don't want to put a structure behind her to help her get some money to raise the baby, and if you don't want to change the system to get the daddy out of prison, what are we talking about? And I think, to me, honestly, it's always been hypocritical, because I don't think race is social justice. I think race is life. If we don't protect the sanctity of life, because your skin is different, how is this disconnected from the sanctity of the womb? Forget about the fact when we talk about voting, Bishop, I mean, people don't want to talk about systemic racism issues. Well, even if you did mobilize the Black community, a lot of the jails are filled with Black men. They can no longer vote forever. Mm-hmm. So you have this giant portion of our population who will never be able to have a voice.
Wonder why that is.
Never be able to weigh in. So it's very interesting how our jails are filled with Black men, and then we accuse the Black community of not having a voice at times, and it's harder to register, it's harder to vote. All kinds of crazy stuff happens when some Black friends try to vote. I've been able to stroll in every time, punch a ballot, walk out. I've heard some of the stories of Black people trying to vote that just would even blow your mind. So I think, again, we're complicit in this, because if we want to teach people to build and vote on their convictions, do that. But when we start putting it where we put it now, which is if you even have a different thought, if you even want to raise your hand and ask a question, you're anti-God, we're in trouble. And so I don't necessarily know what to do, but Bishop, before I throw it to Judah, I would like, there's one practical thing as I'm sitting here, like I know there's more pastors that are tired of being complicit. I know there are more than less. Yeah. We need to get a list of some of these systems that we can attack and we can mobilize some of these small judicial things. Some of these, I know there's a pastor going to watch this and go, oh, I want to do that. I got a church of 300. Where do we petition? What law? What DA is crooked? Like, if we can put together something like that for people, I think we can start chipping away at this. I really do, because most people sit here and they go, you're either one of two camps. One camp is you don't care. No one's listening because they're defensive. The other camp is, I'm with you. What do you do? And then they end up going thoughts and prayers because they don't know what to do. Yeah. So I know one thing I want to change as a leader is I want to start putting people, Judah, you know how your Chelsea put up that thing, the 5-step thing she's going to do to actively do more than post. We need to do that on a grand scale and say, if you care about people, if you care about, eradicating racism, these are 7 things that your church will always be about. These are 9 things that you have to care about. And I think little practical things like that can start to chip away, but the politics it's a mess right now. Because of a lot of the stuff, the pressure we put on people, as especially white evangelical Christianity. We are a political party. And if anybody wants to believe otherwise, they're kidding themselves.
If you want to find out how to affect the political systems where there are controls that are unjust or unreasonable, and you can pick out what you're comfortable with doing, if you text the word demands, DEMANDS, to 55156, you will get a panoramic view of what really needs to happen to bring about long-term systemic change in the criminal justice system, in the Black community, with the educational systems, and with the healthcare system. Demands, DEMANDS, to 55156. And if you want to know specifically about the case with George Floyd, text Floyd to the same 55156. You will get a whole lot of information. And I want to say to you, to our audience that's listening out there, I know this is an uncomfortable conversation, and we're in an uncomfortable place in this country. And if you've ever been married very long, you've had to have had some uncomfortable conversations, or you got divorced. So sometimes uncomfortable conversations are very healthy. Get out of your bubble, whether you're Black or white. Go into a Republican, an all-white conservative Republican environment, and sit there and listen. Turn on Fox News and listen at Fox News. Turn on CNN and listen at CNN. Turn on MSNBC. All of them are bent to a particular idea. And we are the result of what we hear, and we swallow it as truth. Get out of your norm and go over there and hear the sides of the story that you're not hearing, and then fact check all of that stuff to see where you actually end up. And when you fact check, realize it's whatever you tout to be true is based on the books you read. Okay, so don't get out of your little corner of recommended reading that Apple is recommending because you read a few books. Now they know how you think, and they're pumping you more of the same, and start getting in some unlikely books to read for how they have figured you out, because all of our technology has figured out what we want to hear, and they're pumping our heads with more of the same. They know how you want to dress, and they show you the clothes that you have bought in the past. We are all being hardwired right now for dollars, all of us. And I think that we are all too aligned with parties and not principles, okay? With politics and not policies. And I have for a long time voted both ways. It depends on who I thought would do the best job for the country. And for a long time, I look at who will do the best job for the country. I don't care whether it's Black or white or female or male or Republican or Democrat right now. I want somebody who can run this country for us. And I want somebody whose word I can trust on the things that matter to me, that make a difference in my world, that secure a future for my grandchildren. I want somebody who's smart enough to know that right now our enemies are having a party, because while we fight amongst ourselves, they are strategically buying up property in the recession, taking control of the land around us, hacking into all of our systems to infiltrate how we think by the truth that we perceive that it is, preparing themselves for a war while we are talking about nuclear war. They are doing things with germs They're doing things on such another level. And clearly we are not prepared to fight off a biological war that affects us physiologically. We're running around here trying to make ventilators at the car lot.
Mm-hmm.
We are not ready because we are so focused on stereotypical ideas. We are not ready for the 21st century. I went to Dubai and I left scared when I saw how far ahead they were in so many ways. You got to get out of America and see the world. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. If you can't get out, read out. Get out some kind of way and see where the world is going and where we are stuck in these cycles that empower people to manipulate us so that they can get into positions of power. I have been in the rooms when the decisions were made. We got to get the base revved up. Let's feed them some meat. Let's go after this. And then we all respond in typical ways, just like your phone has figured out what you like to wear.
Mm.
And that has got to change.
Yes, sir.
I'm not trying to change you from being pro-life. I'm not trying to change you from being against same-sex marriage or for same-sex marriage or a woman's right to choose. Everybody's going to think what they're going to think about what they think. I personally am pro-life. I always have been, but it's a tough job to vote for pro-life if it means that I sacrifice afterlife.
Understood. Understood.
Okay. Why should I have to sacrifice one principle for the other? Why am I put in a position where a part of me gets left out either way I choose?
Yes, sir.
Those are the tough positions that we find ourselves in, and white America should find themselves in there too. And we should make our politicians uncomfortable by demanding more out of our country. We should be so outraged right now that they cannot stereotypically pick out who is angry. We should be so outraged right now that we should shock them and let the church rise up and start to be like Jesus.
Come on.
Who really went for the underdog. He said, whatsoever you have done, we're 13% of the population. A lady asked me on social media, why would you speak out for these causes? I don't see you speaking out for white causes. I said, first of all, you're absolutely wrong. I do speak out for white causes. I list some things that I do. Number two, Jesus went after the minority. Whatsoever you have done to the least of these, you have done that unto me. The Spirit of the Lord God has anointed me to bind up the wounds of the brokenhearted. Everything that he quotes is about somebody who is oppressed.
Right.
Jesus says nothing about going after the successful. He is going after the oppressed. And when he does talk to the successful, he makes them accountable to serve the oppressed. And if we are going to be like Jesus, then we have to come out of our business record. And I'm a business person, and I'm for business and entrepreneurship all the way. I think the economy matters. I want everybody to have the kind of economy that you're not sending your kid to the college you can afford, but the college that best serves them. I want everybody to have not about being rich, but the opportunities to choose a better life, to move out of some of these neighborhoods where they're shooting at 3 o'clock in the morning. I want them to have the option to be able to do that so bad I can't stop talking about it, okay? But at the end of the day, there are other things. I didn't mean to go on a rant. I will end with that.